All right. Hello to all our listeners out there who are working hard for the UPSC exams. One area you'll definitely see on your exams is India's defense capabilities. And, today we're going to be focusing on the Indian Navy. They've just commissioned not one, not two, but three new warships. So, yeah, we're going to talk about the INS Nilgiri, the INS Surat, and the INS Vakshir. Each one is pretty amazing in its own way. But what's really fascinating is what this tells us about India's strategy on the world stage.
You hit the nail on the head there. This isn't just, a show of force. This is really like a carefully crafted move. Years in the making, really reflecting India's long-term goals, both regionally and globally.
Okay, so let's break this down, starting with the INS Nilgiri. It's the first ship in its class, and the first one built as part of Project 17A. Now, I know we're throwing around a lot of Project this and Class that, but, but for the UPSC, it's vital to understand these distinctions.
Absolutely, yeah. Knowing these terms shows a real grasp of how India builds its naval capabilities. So Project 17A, it's all about creating these advanced stealth frigates. And the Nilgiri is it's the first of seven planned. And these aren't your average ships. They're designed for multiple missions. They're like powerhouses.
So not just your run-of-the-mill ship, then. What can this thing actually do?
Well, think of it like this. The Nilgiri it's like the Swiss Army knife of warships. It can take on other ships, it can defend against air attacks, and it can even hunt down submarines. It's packed with all the latest tech, supersonic missiles, 76 millimeter guns, even close-in weapon systems. It's a serious force. And trust me, knowing this level of detail, the specifics of India's naval strength, that can really elevate your UPSC answers.
Okay, that's seriously impressive, but what about the INS Surat? It's the final ship built under Project 15B. What makes this one stand out?
The Surat. This one's special. You see, it's the culmination of years of work, really showcasing India's commitment. Commitment to building a navy it's world class. But here's the thing, and this is important. It's actually India's first warship enabled with AI.
Hold on. AI on a warship. Is that even possible? How does that even work?
It's cutting edge tech, and frankly, it's a total game changer. So AI basically allows the Surat to process information, analyze threats, and make decisions much faster and more efficiently than ever before. Just imagine it can go through tons of data, pinpoint targets, it can even predict enemy movements, giving it a huge tactical advantage, especially in naval warfare.
Wow, okay, so we have the incredibly versatile Nilgiri and the AI-powered Surat. It's like India's putting together a superhero team of warships. Now let's talk about the INS Vakshir, which is a submarine. It's the last one of the Kalvari class, built under Project 75.
Ah, yes, the Vakshir. This one's all about stealth and versatility. Just imagine it lurking beneath the waves, virtually undetectable. Gathering intelligence, conducting surveillance, even supporting special operations, it's a vital part of India's maritime strategy.
So it's not just about attacking.
Oh, definitely not. It's about being there, being present, gathering information, and being able to act decisively when it's needed. You got to remember, submarines are often the eyes and ears of a navy.
Now, I remember reading that the Vakshir and actually the whole Kalvari class
Uh,
are based on the Scorpene class design, which I think originally came from France. Tell me more about that.
right, you're absolutely right. The Scorpene class was a French design, known for being incredibly stealthy. The Vakshir uses a diesel-electric propulsion system that's super quiet, making it really hard for enemies to find it.
So it's like a silent hunter just waiting to strike. And for our listeners prepping for the UPSC, understanding these different types of submarines, their capabilities, that's super important for the exam.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And not just the types, but how they fit into India's overall naval strategy and what that means globally.
That's a great point. So we have these three very different ships all commissioned together. Is there a specific reason they did it this way? Why such a big ceremony for all three?
That's a great question. And the answer is, well, commissioning them at the same time, it's a statement. It tells the world that India is serious about modernizing its navy and that it's ready to, assert itself in the Indian Ocean region.
And we can't forget about the Make in India aspect of all this, right?
Yeah.
All three of these ships were made right here in India.
Exactly. It highlights the success of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is, as you know, all about self-reliance when it comes to defense. It means India's relying less on foreign suppliers, and it's really boosting our own shipbuilding industry.
And I guess it shows off India's growing technological know-how as well, right?
Yeah. 100%. And remember, these projects, they don't happen overnight. We're talking 10, maybe even 15 years of development and planning. This shows a real commitment to creating a strong and modern navy, which is essential for a country with, well, with ambitions like India.
This is all really interesting stuff, and I bet our listeners are loving this, especially if they're prepping for those UPSC exams. But, it's not just about the facts and figures. It's really about understanding the bigger picture.
Yeah, these new ships are just pieces of a much larger puzzle. We're talking about India's evolving naval strategy and its role as a major player on the global stage.
And we'll definitely dive deeper into that right after the break, so stick with us.
Yeah, these ships, they're not just, floating symbols of national pride or anything like that. They have serious strategic implications
Yeah.
for India's position. And for all our listeners out there who are aiming for those top UPSC scores, well, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, so let's connect the dots then. We know these ships, they make India's Navy stronger.
Yeah.
But what does that mean practically? Like, what's the real advantage here?
Think of it this way. The Indian Ocean, it's like a giant chessboard, right?
Yeah.
And these ships, well, they're some of India's most powerful pieces. They really enhance India's ability to patrol its coastline, to respond to any threats, and to just maintain a strong presence, a credible deterrent against any potential adversaries.
So it's not just about being aggressive or anything. It's more about having the ability to act if needed, right?
Exactly. It's about power projection. But it's also about ensuring stability and security, especially in a region that's so vital for India, not just strategically, but economically too. Don't forget, the Indian Ocean is a major trade route and a source of so many resources, so India's presence there is crucial.
And it's not just about military might either, right? I mean, these ships can play a role in other areas too.
Oh, absolutely. They can be used for disaster relief, humanitarian aid, search and rescue operations, things like that. It shows that India is committed to being a responsible power.
Okay, so we've talked about why these ships are important, but I'm also curious about the how. Like, what kind of technological advancements are we talking about here?
Well, take the INS Nilgiri, for example. It was built using this integrated construction technique, which basically allows for faster shipbuilding, which is huge. It means India can expand its fleet more rapidly, which is super important these days when technology is constantly evolving.
So India's not just building more ships, it's building them smarter too. That's pretty impressive. What about the INS Surat? We were talking about its AI capabilities earlier. I gotta say, I'm still wrapping my head around that.
I know, it's pretty mind-blowing, right? AI makes everything faster, decision-making, resource allocation, and who knows, maybe even autonomous operations in the future.
Wait, hold on. Autonomous warships. So like ships that can sail and fight on their own. That sounds amazing, but also kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it's definitely cutting-edge stuff, and it does raise some big questions about, the future of warfare. But for those UPSC enthusiasts out there, this is the kind of topic that might pop up on the exam.
So it's not just knowing that AI exists, but understanding its implications.
Exactly. You have to analyze the impact of AI on naval warfare, potential benefits, the risks, even the ethical considerations, especially when we're talking about autonomous weapon systems.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to think about. Now let's talk about the INS Vashir and its stealth capabilities. I imagine being undetectable is, well, it's pretty important for a submarine.
Oh, absolutely. It's a submarine's greatest asset. The Scorpene class, which the Vashir is based on. It's famous for being incredibly quiet. It uses a special hull design and all these noise dampening technologies to basically minimize its acoustic signature, which makes it, well, really hard to detect.
It's like an underwater ninja.
Haha, yeah, exactly. But don't forget, the Vakshir isn't just about hiding. It's also equipped with all sorts of weapons. Torpedoes, anti-ship missiles. It can pack a punch.
So it's got brains, A&D brawn, huh? What about intelligence gathering? What role does it play there?
Oh, submarines are incredibly valuable for intelligence gathering. They can go places where surface ships can't, gathering critical data, enemy movements, activities, capabilities. This information is, it's like gold for strategic planning and decision-making.
So like a secret agent just lurking beneath the surface.
Exactly. And this is another key point for UPSC aspirants. Submarines, they're not just about combat.
Okay, so we have these three incredible vessels, the Nilgiri, the Surat, and the Vakshir. Each one is a huge leap forward in naval technology and really a testament to India's growing maritime power.
But it's important to remember this isn't just about hardware, right? It's about the skilled personnel who operate these ships, the strategic planning behind their deployment, and, the overall vision that's shaping India's role in the world.
And speaking of India's role in the world, that brings us to a really important question. How do these new ships, how do they affect India's relationships with other countries, especially in the Indian Ocean region?
Now that's the million-dollar question. And it's one that any aspiring diplomat or policymaker really needs to grapple with.
I'm all ears. Let's unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've definitely established that these new ships, they're a big deal for India, but how do they actually, how do they affect India's relationships with other countries, especially the ones in the Indian Ocean region? This is something, our UPSC aspirants out there should be really paying attention to.
Yeah, you're right. This is where things get even more interesting, from a geopolitical point of view. So we know the Indian Ocean is becoming a more and more complex place, with a lot of different powers, all kind of vying for influence.
Yeah, we're talking about China's growing presence in the region, the importance of those trade routes, the possibility of conflicts over resources. It's a pretty high stakes game, right?
Exactly. So how do these new ships change the dynamics? Well, on the one hand, they definitely strengthen India's ability to protect its own interests and to deter any potential threats. It's kind of a way to ensure stability and maintain that balance of power.
So it's like India saying, hey, we're here, we're strong, and we're ready to defend what's ours.
Exactly. But it's not quite as simple as just, flexing muscles. It's a delicate balancing act, really, because some countries might see India's growing naval power. Well, they might see it with a little suspicion, maybe even as a challenge to their own ambitions.
So India has to be assertive, but also diplomatic, protecting its interests, but also managing its relationships with its neighbors.
Yeah, it's a tough balance. And this is where your knowledge of international relations and India's foreign policy comes in. You need to be able to analyze how these naval advancements, well, how they fit into that bigger picture of regional dynamics.
So for our listeners who are studying for the UPSC, what are some key things they should be thinking about?
Well, think about the impact on India's relationships with countries like China, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, the Gulf states. How might these ships influence things like maritime trade, cooperation, even the potential for conflict? There are no easy answers, but thinking through these complexities, that's what's going to make your UPSC answers really stand out.
So it's not just about, memorizing the names of the ships.
Yeah.
Or the specs of their weapon systems. It's about understanding that broader strategic context, right?
Absolutely. The UPSC exam, it's not about just, regurgitating facts. It's about critical thinking, it's about analysis, and it's about showing a deep understanding of the issues facing India today.
And hey, maybe one day some of our listeners will be the ones shaping India's naval strategy, using the knowledge and the insights they've gained, from their UPSC journey.
Yeah, that's a pretty exciting thought, isn't it? That our conversations here could help shape the future leaders of India.
Totally. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's go over the key takeaways.
All right, so first and foremost, the commissioning of these 3 vessels, it's a huge milestone for India. It's a sign that India is serious about modernizing its navy and that it has big ambitions to become, well, a leading maritime power.
And second, these vessels, they really represent the cutting edge of technology, from stealth capabilities to AI integration. It just highlights how fast things are changing in naval warfare.
And lastly, these advancements, they have serious geopolitical implications, especially in the Indian Ocean region where India's role is becoming more and more important. Don't forget, this is a dynamic and a complex region, and understanding how all the different pieces fit together well, it's crucial for anyone who wants to help shape India's future.
And for our listeners who want to learn even more about all this, where should they go?
Well, for this deep dive, we got our information from 2 excellent sources, the Indian Express and India Today. I definitely recommend checking out their coverage, for a more in-depth look and different perspectives on this.
Great advice. We really hope you found this deep dive, insightful and helpful, especially as you prepare for your UPSC exams. And remember, the learning never stops. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never lose that thirst for knowledge.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to, like, subscribe, and share it with all your fellow UPSC warriors out there. We'll be back with more deep dives into all sorts of critical topics, the kind of topics that will help you ace those exams and become the leaders and policymakers of tomorrow. Until then, happy studying.